Morning everyone, my name is Marley Pino. Today, let us discuss about the global interstate system. But before that, I'm going to give a definition about interstate system. So, interstate system is the idea of a system requires the existence of units among which interaction take place. In the interstate system, the units are the state and the interactions include war, diplomacy, and cooperation. So state is a political unit that has authority over its own affair, or in other words, its borders are recognized by other countries. So in this context, state means the political unit within which power and authority reside. This unit can be a whole nation or a subdivision within a nation. Thus, the nations of the world are sometimes referred to as states. So, the Treaty of Westphalia of 1648 established the notion of the nation-state and the idea of state sovereignty. Today, the globalization of politics created an atmosphere where the ideas of nation-state, state sovereignty, government control, and state policies are challenged from all sides. So let's proceed to global governance. Global governance in the 20th century. There is a series of specific factors behind the emergence of global governance. The first on the list must be the declining power of nation-states. If states themselves were highly contingent and in flux, it would open the possibility of the emergence of some form of global governance to fill the void, according to Cerny 2007. Then the second factor is the vast flows of all sorts of things that run into and often right through the borders of nation-states. This could involve the flow of digital information of all sorts through the internet. And another set of issues that has led to calls for global governance involves horrendous events within nation-states that the states themselves either foment and carry out or are unable to control, according to or based on Nordstrom 2004. Then, there are global problems that single nation-state cannot hope to tackle on their own. One is the global financial crisis and panic that sweep the world periodically, which nations are often unable to deal with on their own strength. 1996. So the next one is the effects of globalization to governments. One of the key aspects of state sovereignty is the government. Government is a group of people who have the ultimate authority to act on behalf of a state. So each state has its own right to self-determination, and other countries should not intervene in the affairs of the state unless there are extraordinary reasons to do so. And there have been several challenges to the government and ultimately to state autonomy. And we can divide these challenges into four: traditional challenges, challenges from national or identity movements, global economics, and social movements. So traditional movements or traditional challenges rather states that external intervention can generally be described as invasion by other countries. So For example, on traditional challenges, when Saddam Hussein was the ruler of Iraq in 1990, he decided that he was going to take over the oil fields of Kuwait. He invaded Kuwait and it took it over. As a result, he was dislodged by an international coalition led by the United States. These days, we can see external intervention in other forms. Russia's external intervention into the affairs of Ukraine. A sovereign state in the post-Soviet era is another instance of intervention in the autonomy of the state. Russia intervenes in the affairs of people in Crimea who want to become a part of Russia again even though they are part of Ukraine. So, challenges from national identity movements. Challenges from national identity movement states that the next challenges are part of national identity or movement. It is important to know that a nation has a cultural identity that people attach to, while a state is defined entity due to its specific boundaries. However, different people with different identities can live in different states. For example, the Kurds reside in several different countries including Iraq, Iran, and Turkey. So the third one is global economics. The third major source of challenges come from global economics. Global economy demands the states to conform to the rules of free market capitalism. Government austerity comes from developments of organizations that cooperate across countries, such as WTO and regional agreements such as NAFTA, the European Union, and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So the fourth one, or the last, is the global social movement. Global social movement is social movements of people that are not seen as a threat, but they definitely challenge state sovereignty. Finally, we have global movement. Most of the time, they are not seen as a threat, but they definitely challenge state sovereignty. These social movements are transnational movements, which means they occur across countries and across borders. Therefore, states have less control over them. For example, human rights movements create a public sentiment, value, and agenda. The idea is that there are certain rights that states cannot neglect, or generally what we call human rights. If a country decides that they are going to have a particular policy, and if that policy violates the international standard of human rights, there is a challenge to the ability of states to fully implement. The next is the relevance of the state amid globalization. State is a polity under a system of governance. It is a distinctive political community with its own set of rules and practices, and that is more or less separate from other communities. And it has four elements, which is people, or permanent population, and the second one is territory, the third one is government, and the last one is the sovereignty. So government, permanent population refers to a population that is linked to a specific piece of territory on a permanent basis. The population must be reasonably stable. And this population does not refer to a nomadic people that move from one place to another in an indefinite time. The second one is the territory. Territory is an administrative division, usually an area that is under the jurisdiction of a state. A territory has a clear boundaries. A territory is effectively controlled by the third element, which is the government. Government is the system or group of people governing an organized community, generally a state. It can also describe the leadership of a supernatural organization. So, what is government? Government is the governing body of the state, so it is a system or a group of people which performs basically the two most important functions, which is the legislative and then the executive power within a certain territory. So the last one is the sovereignty. Sovereignty is the full right and power of governing body over itself without any interference from outside sources or bodies. Sovereignty, so what is this? This is the supreme authority within a territory. You can impose rules because the authority is yours. You will not depend on other countries for that's the implementation of a certain policy or law. Territory and permanent population is in these two are important as government and sovereignty, because when you don't have territory, you cannot be called a state. Territory is usually becomes the identity of a state, say, for instance, the Philippines as Filipinos. We are known for our country, even the Russians, even the Americans, so we are always linked with our territory, so that's very important to us. So, peace treaties and military alliances are the UN and the NATO. Global politics entails relationship of countries and different governments and non-governmental organizations. So, the nations that belong in this is the United Nations. United Nations is an intergovernmental organization that aims to maintain international peace and security, develop friendly relations among nations, achieve international cooperation, and be a centre for harmonizing the actions of nations. So it is one of the leading political organizations in the world where nation states meet and deliberate. However, it remains as an independent actor in global politics. The premise for its establishment was the restructuring of the world devastated after the Second World War II. Then next, according to Witzer 2015, maintaining international peace and security became the central mission of the UN after the war. Up to this day, the UN is the major force in the government interstate relations. The next one is the UNICEF. UNICEF is a United Nations agency responsible for providing humanitarian and developmental aid to children worldwide. The agency is among the most widespread and recognizable social welfare organizations in the world, with a presence in 192 countries and territories. The UN is not all about fights. It has a program called UNICEF, or the United Nations Children's Emergency Fund. Its primary goal is to help children around the world. They collect funds to distribute emergency relief from famine and poverty and disease. It also provides education programs in areas where there are no schools. While UNICEF is part of the United Nations, they operate semi-independently and rely on fundraising. In terms of economic issues, the main focus of the UN is the reduction of global inequality. The Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, cover a range of concerns for the improvement of all aspects of life. The next is the UNEP. UNEP stands for United Nations Environmental Program. UNEP is responsible for coordinating the UN's environmental activities and assisting developing countries in having environmentally sound policies and practices. The increasing rate of greenhouse gas emissions, rising sea level, and occurrence of extreme weather patterns are the effects of climate change. As a response, the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, took efforts that can mitigate climate change, like assessment of climate science, facilitation of climate agreements, and giving assistance to countries to reduce emissions. So the next one is the IPCC. IPCC stands for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is an intergovernmental body of the United Nations that is dedicated to providing the world with objective scientific information relevant to understanding the scientific basis of the risk of human-included climate change, its natural, political, and economic impacts and risks, and possible response options. The next one is the ICG. ICG is one of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations. It settles disputes between states in accordance with international law and gives advisory opinions on international legal issues. The next, ICC, or International Criminal Court, is an intergovernmental organization and international tribunal that sits in The Hague, Netherlands. The next one is the ITLAS. An International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea is an intergovernmental organization created by the mandate of Third United Nations Conference of the Law of the Sea. It was established by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, signed at the Montego Bay, Jamaica on December 10, 1982. The OHCHR, or Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, is a department of the Secretariat of the United Nations that works, promote, and protect the human rights that are guaranteed under international law and stipulated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of 1948. NATO, or North Atlantic Treaty Organization, also called the North Atlantic Alliance, is an intergovernmental military alliance between 30 European and North American countries. The organization implements the North Atlantic Treaty that was signed on April 4, 1949. The last, I don't know if this is the last. The last is the global citizenship. Citizenship is the status of a person recognized under the custom or a law of a sovereign state or local jurisdiction as a member of or belonging to the state. Each state is free to determine the conditions under which it will recognize persons as its citizens and the conditions under which that status will be drawn. Cecilia Johanna argues that global citizenship can be defined as a moral and ethical disposition that can guide the understanding of individuals or groups of local and global context and remind them of their relative responsibilities within various communities. According to Boraldi 2012, global citizens might be a new type of people that can travel within these various boundaries and somehow still make sense of the world. And WSF, or World Social Forum, is an annual meeting of civil society organization first held in Brazil, which offers a self-conscious effort to develop an alternative future through the championing of counter-hegemonic globalization. It is centered on addressing the lack of democracy in economic and political affairs. And in 1998, worldwide rallies condemning the violence were made possible through the global war in which, according to Ritzer 2015, became an interesting global watchdog for Chinese interest. That's all, and thank you for watching.